So if you guys want to go ahead and import the corner pin, so I'll read this in. There's corner pin, there's the sequence, here's what we're going to use. Just so you guys know, the way the corner pin works is a little bit differently. The corner pin is essentially a type of distortion on an image. So let me create a corner pin and show you what I'm talking about here. If I create a corner pin, you see how it puts these 4 little points on each corner? And then you can grab this and kind of move these around. Right. This is why they would call it a perspective change. See how I'm trying to get like a perspective of like maybe I'm looking going away from me, something like this. Whenever you're dealing with corner pins, you just need to worry about translation. It's just the translation of each one of these points and how it distorts the image. Now, like I said in the keynote, corner pins are really good with things that have 4 defined corners. So if you need to replace a laptop screen or a projector screen or a billboard or a television, something like that, you can do corner pins on it and just track the corners and then apply your image to the laptop or whatever you need to. We have this laptop screen we need to replace. This is going to adhere itself to a corner pin. Now, there's a few more things I need to explain to you guys about the tracker that I haven't really talked to you guys yet about. We've been keeping it very basic. Basically, what we've been doing is adding a track, hitting play, and hoping for the best, right? Just letting it track through. That would be essentially what we would call, you would hear somebody call it maybe an auto track, because you're just adding a tracker and letting it kind of just track through the sequence. Real shots tracks can be much more difficult, right? With these little simple podcasts, they're here meant to teach you guys the tools, so they're relatively easy things to track. In the real world, stuff can get much more difficult. So you have what's called keyframe tracking. And keyframe tracking is basically babysitting your tracker. So you're saying, okay, every few frames you need to be here. And I'm going to go ahead a few frames, you need to be here. And it is a little bit more work, but it really helps when you need to refine tracks, because tracks don't always track perfectly. They'll jump around, they'll slide around, they'll move around. And if you're doing this keyframe tracking, you can refine and fix that stuff a lot easier than as opposed to just doing an auto track, which is what we've been doing. So watch me set up the keyframe tracking. Like I said, what's good about this is once you do one corner, you just repeat the process for the other 3. Now, before that I start, you do want to know kind of the nature of how a corner pin lays itself out. So if I look at a corner pin, just load this in the viewer, you'll notice that you have 1 at the bottom left, you have 2 at the bottom right, 3 at the upper right, and then 4 at the upper left. So when I track, I want to follow this. So the first area I want to track is in the bottom left corner, in the bottom right corner, then the upper right corner, then the upper left corner. That way, when you export the data, everything lines up perfectly. If you do this out of order, let's say you track this one first, then maybe you track this one second, then this one third, then this one fourth, you run the risk of when you export that data, it making everything look all inverted and wrong, all right? It doesn't always happen, but it can happen. So it's always just best to just kind of just know when you're doing a corner pin, we start at the bottom left of whatever we're tracking and we just work our way around counterclockwise. Again, just watch me do this. We'll do it all together again in a moment. I just want you guys to sit back and watch the process. So I'm going to start on frame 1. I'm going to add my track in right on the corner where I need it, right there. All right. And with keyframe tracking, we're going to jump ahead in frame increments. Now, this down here at the bottom is how we can jump ahead in frame increments. Notice it says 10, which 10 should be okay. So I'm just going to jump ahead and go to frame 11. And I'm going to say, okay, on frame 11, you need to be here. Now notice as soon as I let go, boom, another keyframe popped up. What I can do is I can kind of click between these keyframes and in my little preview window, make sure that I'm staying where I need to stay, right? So if I need to adjust it, I can come and adjust it, click, make sure it's where it needs to go. So I'm going to jump ahead again, go to frame 21, say, okay, on frame 21, you need to be here. And again, boom, there's another keyframe that popped up. And again, I can jump between them, making sure I'm sticking where I need to stick. Now, I don't want to keep hitting this button, so I'm going to use the shortcut key, which is shift right arrow. That will jump ahead in the frame increments that you have set. Line it up, shift right arrow, line it up, shift right arrow. Now that's a big jump, so I'm probably going to need to add one more track in between those, or one more key in between those, and then go to the last frame. It's good to make sure that you have your keyframes on the first frame and the last frame. Now, right here in the middle, I'm going to add one more because there's a big jump here, and this is usually the problem area of this sequence. I'm going to go to frame 47 and say you need to be right here. Okay, so again, like I said, it was a little bit more work involved, but now I want to track between these keyframes. This button that I've been telling you guys to push, don't push it. All right, if I click this normal button, say track to the end, it's going to overwrite all these keyframes I just set, which is not good. You don't want to do that, lose all your work. So the keyframe tracking buttons are these buttons right here. This little button that looks like it's on top of a rectangle, and this little button that looks like it's the playhead on top of like a golf tee or something like that. So this one's going to track between all the keyframes, and this one's only going to track between the 2 current keyframes. So I want to track between all keyframes. So I'm going to go ahead and track. Now watch what's going to happen to this track. It's not going to be perfect. Watch what happens as I track through this. Kind of slipping. Whoa. See it? Oh, whoa. You see what it did? All right. Now, again, that's very common for a tracker to do something like that. Now, the old way that I was showing you with the auto track, you would be in a predicament if that happened. You'd have to go back, delete those keyframes, kind of adjust your search region bounding box, try to track again until it stopped, maybe delete keyframes. It's just kind of a hassle of doing it that way. But with keyframe tracking, I can clean this up very easily. All right. Now, notice, again, we see all of our keyframes and these little points, these little dots here, but they're gray. They don't really tell me if this is a good or a bad track. Now I'm going to turn this button on, and you guys should immediately understand what it means. In fact, I shouldn't even have to explain it. You see this little button that looks like a stoplight? Watch what happens, turn it on. Now, the way Nuke defines it, or the way they describe it in the documentation, is it's the tracker's confidence level in the pattern that it's tracking, which sounds ridiculous that a tracker has confidence. It's just the way it describes it. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's tracking the wrong pattern. It's just not sure if it's tracking the right pattern. You just have to check it. But now watch what I can do. Since I'm in this keyframing, I'm going to go right around this area where I noticed the first little bit of trouble. Right around here. And it looks okay. It doesn't look, maybe it's a little bit off. So I'm going to adjust it very small, like just a small little adjustment. And because I'm on the keyframe, it's going to retrack through these areas and clean all these trackers up. So again, you can't do this with the auto track, but you can with the keyframing. So I'm going to grab it, make my adjustment. Now watch what happens when I let go. See how it retracked and cleaned them up? If you're in yellow, you're probably okay. The orange ones and red ones, though, you do want to take a look at. So I'm going to go to this orange. And again, you have to look at it. You can say, well, it looks like it's relatively good. Doesn't mean, those colors don't mean it's bad. It's just not sure if it's getting what it needs. Track and clean those up. All right, and then I'll go to these here. Now, these you might have to do on an individual basis because they're so far apart from each other. So that one obviously drifted. I'm going to line it back up where it needs to go and let it track through. Oh, so now I'm getting errors on these two. So I'm going to skip that one and try to get just this one and see if it cleans this one up as well. I'm going to move it. Oh, no, it didn't. So once you get to kind of this point, you're basically doing this hand keying. And then I'll go all the way to this one here, this last one, get it where it needs to go. So that one looks good, right? And I can move on to doing track 2, then track 3, and then track 4. All right, now we're starting at the bottom left. Now, before I start, I want you guys to give me, why do you think we have these X's on this green screen here? See how I have these 4 X's here and then these 4 X's here? So the reason why we have these here is in case this corner ever becomes obscured, I can offset to here and keep tracking. And then if this becomes obscured or blocked, I can offset and go to here and keep tracking, right? In this case, it wouldn't, or the shot, but let's say, this power drill, as it kind of rotated around, it ends up blocking this corner here. I'm like, how do I track that? Well, that's why we have these on the monitor. So I can just offset to that area and keep tracking. So let's start on frame 1. And we're gonna hold down Option Command and click right here. And then I'm gonna jump ahead. Again, down here at the bottom is where you jump ahead in frame increments. So 10 frames, that should be fine, although you'll need to add a few frames around the mid-40s, or a few keyframes around the mid-40s. So I'm going to jump ahead, frame 11, line it up. Again, use your little preview window to kind of line it up here at the top. Remember, you can make this as big or as small as you need it. Do something like this, kind of keep this over here. Again, I'll jump ahead. Now I'm on frame 21. I'm going to line it up and go to the next, frame 31. I'll line this up. Frame 41, I'll line it up, 46, then I'll go to 51, and then 57, which is the last frame. Again, it's always good to have keys on the first and last frame when you're doing keyframe tracking. Once you got all your keys set, so remember, do not hit this button or you'll erase all your keys. We want to hit this button with a little playhead over the rectangle here. And just let it track through. And again, you've got those ones like I do here. See these 4 here, they're around those frames 40. 48, 47, 48, 49, and 50. Those are probably going to need to be done one at a time because they're so far apart. But what I can do is go back to some of these in the beginning. Like if you have a clump of them, see how I have 2 orange here and 2 orange here? I'm going to grab the one in the middle and try to fix that one, and it'll correct those ones around it. And then I'll come around here, and then I'll come here, just these. Again, like I said, these ones that get in the 40s, you have to kind of do one at a time. Which, like I said, basically at this point, you're just kind of hand keying at 49, good. And then put these at the end. Okay. So if you notice, see how mine's all kind of green and light colored? It's good. I can go ahead and move on to the next one. And you guys might notice I'm going kind of fast through this, and I'll explain. You'll know why in a moment. You guys can track the corner, or you can track here and keep the shadow. I'm just going to go ahead and track the corner. If I wanted to replace the shadow, I can. In fact, it's not really a shadow, it's just the image. So I'm going to track the corner here. I'm just going to use a checkerboard, but that's boring. If you guys want to do something more stimulating, interesting to look at, find an image on Google, and I'll show you how to put it on the laptop. Just, I always say, keep the image PG-13, please. So usually the corner that gives me the most problems is the last one, track 0.4. I usually have to refine that one the most. So again, guys, the quick key is just shift right arrow to jump ahead. That way you don't have to keep hitting that button. So let me show you how you export the data and how you get the image onto your, again, I'm going to make sure that translation's on for all these, but I don't need rotation and scale because like I said, this is just going to go to a corner pin which distorts the image. So you just need translation for these. Shift select, create a corner pin. Let's go to my first frame here. And I'm going to use current frame here. Go ahead and hit create. And there's my corner pin with the data on it. So again, I'm just going to do a checkerboard here. All right, I'm going to plug into the corner pin and then load this into the viewer. Now you notice it doesn't do anything. All right, there's my tracking data, but my checkerboard hasn't been distorted yet. All right, and that's because in order for the corner pin to distort the image correctly, it needs to know a little bit of information about this image that you're plugging into it, specifically its resolution. So it needs to know its starting point so it knows where to kind of how to scale it. So in the corner pin, you have to go to its From tab and say set to input. And when you do that, now you'll see it kind of conforms it to how it needs to be. And then I'll just merge it over. And there I have my awesome checkerboard pattern over my screen here. And again, it's not perfect. It looks like my bottom right corner is a little off. My upper right corner is wiggling around a whole lot. See it wiggling? Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. All right, so I need to go back and adjust that. Again, because I exported a corner pin with an expression, updating the tracker will automatically update the corner pin. Backdrop this, and I'll call this one corner pin. So once you have it set up like this, hit Command S, save up.